Ben, welcome to the show, man.
Justin Shank. I'm so honored to be here, man. This is going to be fun.
Dude, I'm excited to have you here. It's funny, we connected, I don't even know how long ago at this point. And we just kind of stayed connected. You came to my live event. You're now part of the Growth Now community, and that's part of the reason why you're here. And it wasn't that you weren't on the radar of who to have on the show, because I love what you're creating in business and in life, and all the beauty that goes with it and the people you're impacting. But we did a contest within the community, and the winner got a spot on the show. And so it fast tracked you, man. Like, this is like, okay, I'm slotting you in. We're getting the show out. We're doing this thing. And I love that, because you're a great example of somebody who is driven, motivated, successful, and yet still hungry. I think when people do certain things in life and they start to create certain things, they either lose their hunger or they get a little arrogant, and you are not that person. That's what I love about you, man. And I want to start there, but I want you to start with, who is Ben Albert today? And then we'll break down how you got there.
Cool, man. And first, I want to acknowledge you. First off, thank you. And it was a simple contest. I happened to win. I like to win. But I didn't do it to get on the show. And I also didn't reach out and said, hey, when can I be on your show? You actually reached out to me to make that offer, which you didn't have to do. And some people would have avoided. And it's not beyond me, the fact that you took time to give me this space, give me this platform. And I truly appreciate you, man, for that, Justin. I think you're a stand-up guy. Who is Ben Albert and where am I today? I host the Real Business Connections Network. We have 5 different segments. We have over 220 shows now in literally just 2 years.
Wow.
And I was 2 years ago, I was furloughed from work. I was a mess. And in just over a year, I replaced that sales executive income as an entrepreneur. A lot of how I did it was through LinkedIn and podcasting. And again, none of this is to brag or really to impress anybody. It's just to impress upon the point that we can dissect exactly what I did. I got lucky, man. It was the right time of my life. And dude, now I'm living my life as an entrepreneur, and I am in the mud learning as I go. I don't pretend like I'm up on the mountain preaching down. I don't have all the answers, but like most of your listeners, and you as well, man, we're figuring it out as we go. So I love conversations like this.
Dude, it's true. We're always figuring it out. And like I mentioned in a little precursor to this conversation, like, that's the people who think they figured it all out, they might as well just be done with life, right? Like, consistent growth is what I love, which is why Growth Now movement has become a movement in itself. And why I love doing this show is because I talk to so many people like yourself who, we're constantly growing. We might be 1 or 2 steps ahead from somebody listening, but there's a chance people listening that are 10 steps ahead, right? Like, I know for a fact that Cory Booker listens to my show. He's doing all right for himself. So, you do all of these things in the process of understanding one foot in front of the other. So I want to go back to 2 years ago. Obviously, we were in the middle of a pandemic 2 years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but we were in the middle of a pandemic and you got laid off. And what was it like in that moment? Like, what was your immediate reaction to that? I know you said you were a little like freaked out, but like, what was the immediate emotions and reaction there?
Yeah, I think one reason I resonate and a lot of listeners resonate with your story is, dude, I came from an alcoholic father. He drank himself to death. My mom has a mental disability. She just passed away, but she was struggling. I'm spending time taking care of her. And I'm working 2 jobs my whole life. First, you've got school and a job, then you've got college and then a job, then you've got 2 jobs because neither of them are paying what you feel you deserve, but you're holding yourself back. We can get into that. And then COVID hits, and I thought I was happy. I thought I was moving up the corporate ladder. I had a cushy income, but I was miserable. And that COVID hit really kind of spurred me into binge drinking for quite some time. And we can dive into this, like morning routine, all the beautiful things like meditation and affirmations and visualization and writing and gratitude journals and making introductions and events. But the binge eating, the binge drinking, was holding me back. And one thing I love, Ed Milet, power of one more, one more rep, one more I love you, one more, just one more phone call, one more hour. I had been doing one more my whole life, but I was doing things like binge drinking, binge eating, binge Netflixing, and actually holding myself back. So all these positives that I just mentioned, all these positive routines actually weren't working
Mm,
because I was doing all these negative things that held me back. And I was in a role in corporate that I thought I was happy, but honestly, I was like taking a half Xanax every Monday because I couldn't handle the stress. So when COVID hit, of course, I leaned into what I knew and I started basically drinking a bottle of Jim Beam whiskey every single weekend,
yeah.
drinking during the week. And it wasn't easy. And I just want to sit with that it wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. And then I did a lot of good things afterwards, but I looked myself in the mirror and I fucking just looked like shit. I don't know if I can swear on your show,
Yeah,
but
you're good.
that's a perfect representation. I looked like crap. And I had to slowly make a change.
Wow, man. Let's unpack that whole scenario for a bit, right? Like, so you talk about your dad being an alcoholic. They say oftentimes when you have a parent that's an addict, and these are questions I get all the time. When you have a parent that is an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict, no matter what their vice may be. Now, we might find addiction in other things, right? We like people talk all the time about all the different types of addictions. What did you notice yourself going down the same path as your father, or were you kind of making excuses for yourself and being like, this is normal, it's just the weekend, or whatever the case may be? Like, what was while it was happening, were you aware you just kept falling back into it, or were you just kind of oblivious to it thinking, oh, this is normal?
Yeah, it's funny. Way back in time, I was a manager at a pharmaceutical place, a pharmacy, and I would actually travel to a lot of pharmacies and do a lot of fill-ins. I was raised Jewish, so I was always the guy working on the Christian holidays, Christmas, things like that.
Yeah.
And one day, one of the employees said, and I had never met this woman before, and this sat with me. She said, "Ben, you seem like you pretend to be vulnerable. Like you're very vulnerable, but only to like mask that there's something more there. I don't know what it
Hmm.
is because I've always been an open person. I've always been as empathetic as possible, as vulnerable as possible. But I feel like I always kind of had a mask on, kind of like pushing away from the reality and not diving as deep as I maybe could. I don't know
Sure.
how this random employee at this pharmacy noticed that. Um, but my father being an alcoholic, he taught me don't ask, don't tell, don't get in trouble. Things like that. Don't get in trouble. Like if you want to go do something, if you want to smoke pot on the side, if you have a drink here or there, that's cool. But the moment the law is involved, that's not okay. I don't necessarily think that's bad advice. But as a really quiet, shy, reclusive kid, I didn't really realize like he was teaching me how to hide my problems
Hmm.
and potentially how to not actually speak up when I needed help. And I'm not here to throw him under the bus, but he had his little man cave and, he smoked, drank, maybe this or that here or there. He smoked cigarettes his whole life, but never did he smoke an entire cigarette in front of me. And I bless him for that. He was a guiding light that I don't smoke cigarettes and I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. However, I feel like at a very young age, I was maybe taught to hide from reality. So when I started to develop problems and as I start to develop problems, they get worse and they're never outward. I'm never beating anybody up or causing a scene. But like many people, I was only doing damage to myself.
Yeah, dude. I love that self-awareness moment for you, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, hey, like my drinking doesn't cause problems for others, or my addiction isn't causing problems for others, therefore it's not a problem. And hey, look, you had success, you had a good job, you were doing all these things, right? Obviously, COVID changed a lot of that, but in that moment where you looked at yourself in the mirror and like something's got to change, what did the process look like after that? And we're gonna get into, by the way, everybody listen, we're gonna get into the business side of things too, but what did that look like, for you? What did that process look like to break that stuff apart? And then what does your life look like now that's a little bit different?
Sweet, man. And I'm going to really slow down to speed up because really what the process looked like from a broad stroke was stacking values and stacking my skills. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I realize it now, but it was really stacking values and stacking skills. And the reason I want to slow down is, I mentioned I was a quiet kid when I was younger. Like literally the first 13 years in my life, like I had a bar mitzvah when I was 13. I'm crackling all over the place. I can't sing. I'm embarrassed. I'm covered in sweat. I barely spoke the first 13 years of my life. So not only was I a quiet kid, I was actually a short kid. Shortest kid in school, second shortest person behind Olivia Lee. She was a little Asian girl. So I was probably not the shortest person in school, but I was quiet, I was short, and I wanted to defeat all odds and be a basketball player. I remember watching Michael Jordan on a daily basis. I was watching Vince Carter during the slam dunk competition, doing like 360s under his
Yeah, man,
leg.
putting his elbow over the rim. He was the first one to do that.
And I was
Vinsanity.
Vinsanity. And I didn't have a single entrepreneur on my wall. I didn't aspire to be a podcaster or an entrepreneur. I aspired to be like Vince or like Mike, which was in a weird way kind of sad because there was no possibility because I didn't have the genetics to pull it off. So
Yeah.
I play basketball. I'm small. I'm quiet. What do you think happens? You get pushed around.
Yeah,
You
bullied,
get
man.
beat up. You get bullied. And right around high school, I've learned this. I'm a very obsessive person when I'm into something. So I'm obsessed with basketball, jersey every day of the week. Don't wash them. I'm pretty sure my mom washed them, but I never confirmed. Then I get into music and I'm obsessed with the music industry. A good friend of mine, Brendan Gansper, introduced me to a local band. Weird name. I just say it for the weirdness of it. They're called Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad.
All
Giant
right.
Panda Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad. They're a reggae band from Rochester, New York.
Wait,
And
wait,
then,
are they still together now?
yes, sir.
Oh,
GiantPandaDub.com,
that's
PandaDubLive.com.
shout
Just
out to
look up,
those guys.
dude, great reggae band. And them, along with a few bands, we became obsessed with the music scene. And this is why I slowed down to speed up. I realize now I started to find purpose in life because I wasn't the best musician. I wasn't the best drummer. I played guitar, drums, this and that. But my real sweet spot was handing out flyers, setting up MySpace pages, selling merch, wearing the merch. Where I'd say about 5% of my high school had Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad shirts because of the legwork we were putting in to promote this incredible local band. So I realize now as a podcaster, marketer, that that's what I get to do for a living: amplify businesses, amplify thought leaders, amplify ideas. Because I was a quiet kid that felt muted. No one in this world has to feel muted. They just need people like me and you to help amplify them, help grow them. That's why I love to market and I love to podcast for that absolute very reason. So to go to the actual question, it was skill stacking. What I realized were my values that I didn't know, but we develop a lot of these values from like 8 to 12, and they resonate and kind of stories happen throughout our life. And for me, it's, that growth mindset, it's connection, community, it's a sense of belonging is really big, and having fun. And I see like my connection to basketball and fun and music and fun and my promoting. So when I started my business rated podcast it was November of 2020. So I launched Balbert Marketing in August of 2020. I was furloughed in March of 2020, launched the podcast in November of 2020. And I didn't realize what I was doing. So I was just stacking all these experiences. So I had hosted a music podcast, so I had some experience there. I did sales for a marketing firm. I understood the marketing that I was selling. I was marketing and promoting bands before I ever knew what marketing was when I
Yeah.
was handing out those flyers and setting up those MySpace pages. I knew what it felt like to be an underdog. I knew what it felt like to feel small. I knew what it felt like to feel muted. And I love putting my chips on the underdog and elevating their voice, amplifying their voice. So when I started this little old Rochester, New York business podcast, because honestly, I was applying for jobs and no one was hiring me. So I had my back was against the wall. Might as well start a podcast, start a business. Why? Who cares? Let's see what happens. It really happened for me that I had an opportunity to, what I realize now, 2 years down in the future, is I was stacking all these experiences that I was never in a better position to start that. 5 years prior, I wouldn't have been able to be successful. 10 years prior, I was thinking about starting a bar.
Well, there's a shift right there.
Exactly. So my whole point is, whether it's today, a year in the past, or a year in the future, or it happened in the past and we don't even realize it yet, I feel like our purpose kind of unravels itself whether or not we know it. And if we
Mhm.
can go back and look at common narratives in our life and determine, what do I value? where is my sweet spot, you can actually create a life that is based around those values and those gifts that you already have. You don't have to go learn anything new. You already have the tools in your toolbox. Does that all
Yeah,
make sense?
dude, it totally makes sense. And it's funny, you couldn't join us yesterday in the community call, but it was a, community led call where a member comes in and leads the training, and he talked about finding your calling. But one of the points, or your purpose, whatever you want to refer to it as, one of the points was there's a constant evolution of your purpose, right? Like your purpose today is going to be different than it was 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Your purpose 10 years from now is going to be different as you evolve and grow and change, right? Like I'm having massive shifts in what my purpose has been over the last number of years. And it took a pandemic to make that shift, right? Like more opportunities are presented as long as you have that, like you mentioned, growth mindset, right? And then you begin to stack your skills. But guess what happens? Your skills evolve, you get new skills, you learn new things, right? And I love the fact that you took this idea of like Facebook page or MySpace pages and stuff like that from back in the day and really kind of worked that into your marketing. A good friend of mine and former guest on the show, Freddie Vasquez, started with bands and MySpace pages, and now he's got a very successful branding company and marketing company. But I want to talk a little bit more about Balbert and kind of, you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a whirl, partnering it with this local podcast. Let's talk about the power of podcasting and networking, because, I still think, even though I've talked about it more times than I could ever imagine, I still think that people miss the boat on podcasting and the power of networking that you can create with it. Talk a little bit about how you approach that and how that's affected and helped your business.
Yes, sir. And I don't know who I'm quoting, Justin, but I've heard confidence comes from memories of winning. Confidence comes from memories of winning. So it's not like I just stopped drinking overnight. I know some people have, and hats off to them. I was in a really dark spot when I started my podcast. I was really in a dark spot when I started Balbert Marketing. But the first thing I did is I said, let's make it Rochester based. I'm from Rochester, New York. I'm a SUNY Brockport alumni. People say to go hyper niche, so let's go as niche as possible. So I started a Rochester, New York business podcast, and I started reaching out to SUNY Brockport alumni on LinkedIn, asking if they wanted to be on the show. I didn't even have a name for the show yet, but I knew from a business savvy sense, lots of different things. First off, a business owner from the local area is my highest probability of becoming a client. And second, a business owner who's willing to talk to me is my highest probability of mentorship and learning from people that every single person I'm going to speak with is multiple steps ahead of me because I've never run a business. So I'm reaching out to SUNY Brockport alumni. I don't have a name yet. I got lucky, Justin. I was like playing with different names. I ended up calling it Rochester Business Connections. And the beauty here, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, on LinkedIn, a friend request is called a connection request. So since I called it Business Connections, it was playing with a common narrative. It wasn't reinventing the wheel. So I'm reaching out to these random people on LinkedIn about, I want to start this Rochester business podcast, Rochester Matters, Rochester Connects, Business Connections, something like that. I see you went to SUNY Brockport as well. I'm a new business owner. Congrats on making it big time, man. And I sent a similar message like that 100 times. And maybe a quarter of those people responded. But those quarter of people that responded, okay, they're looking to connect. They're looking to start a conversation. Here's where we start. And by connecting with maybe those 100, it was probably more than 100, but let's just say 100 messages, a quarter respond. 3/4 of them wanted to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it is, but I feel like if you have a big vision and if you care about the people around you, people way out of your league are willing to put their chips on the little guy because they want to put their investment into something that they see could return long term. Because I had nothing to offer them other than a platform with no listeners.
Yeah.
However,
the show didn't even have a name yet. Yeah. Like, come on.
But the real message here and the real point is I had a beautiful opportunity to build relationships with these initial guests. Some of them now are business partners on different endeavors, referral partners, my biggest cheerleaders, my best friends, and they seeded more and more connections and more relationships that I didn't have to reach out to SUNY Brockport alumni. Over time, I built some notoriety in my local community, rebranded to Real Business Connections just so I could have a more national reach and have people like Justin Shank. I wrote this down. Justin Shank, Learn, Speak, Teach, episode 27. So on
Yes.
Real Business Connections, I have the acronym in front to organize each of the styles of episode. If you go to LST 27, you'll find Justin Shank. I rebranded, so I could put steroids into what I was doing and learn from bigger, better, beautiful, awesome names. But it was really just the building of relationships with a podcast that had no listeners, but the amount that I could learn from the people I connected with and the relationships we got to build and the partnerships paid its weight in dividends, that the time investment was worth anything. And I know starting a podcast is super overwhelming. I tell people, next time you're on a networking call and brainstorming, just go live on Facebook, go live on LinkedIn, click record, do like a panel discussion. Like, it doesn't have to be a full-fledged podcast with a 1-year trajectory. I'm going to do an episode a year, 52 weeks. Like, that is good advice and common advice. Go live, man. Because all I did is network and click record.
Yeah, dude, I love it. And just showing up, right? Like, that's half the battle. And that's the part people miss. Like, they get so caught up or overwhelmed with the big vision that they don't take that first step. And that is something that is just so powerful that you shared there. It's just the understanding of, like, just reach out, ask, give it a try. Right. And that's all we can do. And in the end, when you position yourself with the right people, you have the right questions, you do the right things, then a business comes out of this. Right. And so obviously with your marketing business, I'm sure you work with some of these people that you've interviewed, and it's become a great networking tool for you. And from that standpoint as well. Now, what is your thought process in going and getting guests? Like, if you're like, okay, they're a good guest because, hey, I respect them, or hey, they'd be a good client, or hey, what is your thought process there?
So there's lots of different ways. And, I just want to preface, guys, we're talking about podcast guesting, but this works in any endeavor. If you have a big vision, reach out to people with that vision. With ultimately, you want to collaborate with them. You want to guide them and collaborate with them. And for example, if you're a photographer, you can take pictures of food for free. Then you take pictures of 3 high-end restaurants and you go to restaurant number 4 and you say, hey, I've already worked with this restaurant. Would you like me to take pictures of food as well? If you're a graphic designer, you can do infographics for studies. If you're a writer, you can contribute to blogs, et cetera, et cetera. So we're talking about podcasting, gang, but you can do this in anything in life. So when I'm reaching out to guests, of course, there is a probability that they become clients, but I'm not so specific that I'm only reaching out to a certain profile, like I want them to be clients. But if I were to categorize 2 categories, it's potential customers / connections, and it's anybody that I would love to learn from, that most of the time I would pay to learn from. And I have a medium that provides value, so I can learn from them for free and actually amplify that message for more ripples and more collective impacts by doing it. So it's like people that could be a client or people that you want to learn from. And the second part to that is those people are actually make you look really cool when you're speaking to potential clients. So like Justin Shank's not going to become a client of mine. I mean, you can if you'd like to, but you probably don't need me. However, if someone in your world, in our world, sees that we collaborated together, it edifies us both and makes us look great for other people. So potential guests and anybody I want to learn from, and then the rest is just icing on the cake.
Dude, complete gold, right? Like, I hear everything you're saying, and it's all things that I've utilized podcasting for. You saying genius things, like there's other mediums you can absolutely utilize in order to do this. But I look at people that I've had on my show, and some of these people charge $10,000 for an hour of their time. And I sat down with them and got that time for free. And I got to ask them whatever the hell I wanted. Like, that's the beauty of being a podcaster. It's like, be like, these are my questions I have for you. Whereas even if you somehow found your way in a room with them, you probably wouldn't have the guts to ask them most of those questions. So it makes a comfort level of saying, hey, I can have these types of conversations with you. And then it's also the same way that I've been able to have some of the coolest clients in the world, man. I've had, I have clients with millions of followers, people that have presented on The Secret, the movie, like just crazy things, because you show up, you provide value, everything's in alignment with what you're doing, and you're not coming from a scummy place. Like I'm literally going, hey, I just want to build a relationship. I want to build a friendship and see where that goes. And if that means business, because we can benefit each other, cool. If that means just hanging out, grabbing I still drink, grabbing a drink, cool, I could do that.
Cool.
Like all that type of thing, right? And so that's just so absolutely powerful, man. And so as far as like working with you, what does that look like? I think a lot of people are going to go, I get it, man. I hear what you're saying, like interview them and then whatever. Is it a very natural process for you to present with like, hey, I do marketing, or does it just come up organically?
Yeah, I could use
Does
some
that make sense as a
coaching.
question? I feel like that was like a weird, that came
Oh,
out
but
so
dude,
weird. That made
yeah,
sense.
it makes perfect sense. And it's
Cool.
funny because I'll take coaching from anyone who has it. DM me, give me your thoughts. I try not to be overly pitchy. I have nothing to sell on this interview. Like I'm here to provide value. So I don't pitch anybody that's been on my show. What I do is they're into my CRM. We connect on LinkedIn. I spend a ton of time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn kind of sells me for me because my LinkedIn presence is pretty good.
Mhm.
And I just make a friend and create content. And we all know this in a digital world, it's just a few clicks away where they can learn about what I do. But people don't necessarily want to buy a website with PPC and search engine optimization and content marketing with logo design. They want to move the needle on their business, and
Yeah.
they want to know that the marketer they're working with understands them, can hold them by the hand and partner with them to move that needle together. So I try not to be like, hey, here's all the services I can offer, this is why you need this. I like to build relationships with people that I don't even know are watching me through the content, and then most of the time they come to me. However, I'm sure people would tell me that there's great ways to incorporate more of an aggressive marketing or sales approach. My approach is very soft. So there's value in obviously knowing when to ask. But I'm more give content, give 100 times. And if you get 20 asks, I won. Because if you give 0 times and get 5 asks, you're like, oh, whoop-de-doo. I gave 0 and got 5. I'm a winner. Well, those people aren't going to come back time and time again. I'd rather give 100 and receive 20. I'd rather give way more than I ask, and open to feedback if anybody thinks I'm doing anything wrong.
Yeah, dude. Well, there's no feedback from me because that's the way I do it. I provide value, and what comes from it comes from it. And being very transparent, like this is what I do. And then all of a sudden you'll see them kind of light up because they know that you're not scummy. There is a
Mm.
scummy approach to sales, right? Like there's a beautiful way to do it. And I think it's important for you to sell yourself and sell your services and all those things. But I'm very much like you, give, and the universe in some way will provide, when it's supposed to. And so I love that approach that you take, man. So I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on this show. It's a two-part question. So the first part of the question is, what is your definition of success? The second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day right now to ensure that success for yourself?
I love this question, Justin. I didn't prep other than this question because I'm like, Ben, I don't think you have an answer, man. And the more I think about something and the more I realize I don't have a perfect answer, the answer kind of reveals itself. And this is a cop out answer, but I'm going to use a get out of jail free card, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Justin, I don't think there's any perfect answer to life's biggest questions. I don't think there's a perfect definition to life's biggest question. So that's why I like that you ask that to every single guest, because you're going to get so many different answers. And I actually feel like I'm still in the weeds, like figuring this out, evolving, growing day by day, that I have trouble defining that. But I know that if I'm staying curious, I know that if I'm staying driven, and my second answer would be, in the morning I do affirmations. And part of why I do affirmations is I'm visualizing my future self, and I'm going to try to live in the emotion of being that person today. And when I started doing affirmations 10 years ago, but I was drinking and smoking myself into a stupor, none of the affirmations were coming true because I was holding myself back. My current definition in success is when I look myself in that mirror And I tell myself, you're good enough now and you're only getting better. You're an open channel of creative ideas. Act as if you already have what you want because you're attracting it. When I say like 10 affirmations every morning, am I looking myself and being like, you're full of shit, Ben?
Hmm.
Am I looking at myself and being like questioning myself? Or am I looking at myself and I'm like, wow, I'm actually living this moment? A couple weeks ago, I was like, I need to completely change the affirmations that I'm saying because 90% of them came true.
Wow, man. That's awesome. That's
So it's
awesome.
when you look at yourself in the mirror and it's just you judging yourself, are you lying to yourself? Are you living in alignment with who you want to be? And I guess that would be my definition of success. Just asking myself the question, are you in alignment with who you believe you were meant to be? And if you look at yourself with glazed eyes and the answer is no, yikes. The answer is yes. Let's keep on moving forward.
Yeah, but I think there's so much power in that because it gives you the realization of like, okay, well, what do I have to shift in my life?
Mm,
How do I approach things differently, right? Like, because you're putting yourself in that forward focus of who you want to be, it becomes easier to call yourself out on your bullshit, right? And that's essentially what you ended up doing, and have been able to kind of create the life that you have now and continue to get better every single day. I also love the fact that you mentioned that you don't necessarily have a definition of success. That's why I asked the question in that way. What's your definition of success? Was a massive lesson for me because I thought success was what society said was, especially for a man, right? Get the car, get the house, make a ton of money, get the girl, all the things. And I was like, well, okay, well, I went and got that and I'm still fucking miserable.
mm,
Um, okay, there needs to be a different definition and understanding of what success is, right? And so for me, it's really doing what I want when I want with the people I want to do it with. And what's that look like? That means I have to do things every single day in order to create that life for myself. And so, yeah, man, it's just, I loved your honesty there. So thank you so much for being honest. And I love the evolution of the affirmations, right? Like, congratulations on
thanks, man.
90% happening for you. That's incredible.
Yes, sir.
Love it, man. So I obviously wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, let's cover all the important stuff. Where do people find you? How do they get a hold of you? Obviously, you'd mentioned LinkedIn. How can they connect with you there? What's all the good stuff?
So realbusinessconnections.com. You can Google Real Business Connections. You can go to your podcast player. You're going to want to look for LST number 27 with Justin Shank. And you're going to want to listen to that episode because, again, you guys already know Justin, but it's just another perspective of Justin being interviewed on my show. But really, Real Business Connection, guys, you can Google it, this or that. There's going to be some icons that pop on the screen and they dance around and jump around a little bit. And if you're ADHD, you might want to click them. And if you click them, you'll find the LinkedIn, the Instagram, the Balbert Marketing, this or that. But just Google Real Business Connections and you'll find a lot of stuff.
I love it, man. So before I get to the final question, I do have another question for you. Let's talk beard care.
Okay.
What do you do for that beard that every time I see you, it gets longer and longer? Is there a daily practice? Do you put some serum in there? What's all the good stuff, man? Because this is all I got. It doesn't grow much past this. It's terrible.
I got to admit, the beard's growing on me, literally.
No, dad joke of the week, folks. Ring the buzzer. I love it. So
Nothing
is
too
there
fancy.
is there a process? Do you do the things?
I don't do all of the things. Part of why I like having a beard is it really is low maintenance and it makes my jaw and face look, more sexy and symmetrical. But I'm not like a beard snob with the perfect waxed, mustache or anything like that. I will tell you this, I use beard shampoo. I used to use oil, but basically 80% of my meetings are virtual, so I don't know if the oil shows up, so who really cares? And anyone looking to grow a beard, it is very hard not to get a lot of dandruff. And I like to wear
Really?
black. I wear black tees, so I'm not going to do it and annoy everybody. But if I were to scrape that beard, I'd probably get some dandruff here. Talk about vulnerability, but anyone who has a beard knows it's true.
Yeah.
So again, I'm open minded to any beard tips. Because I'd call myself an amateur, man. Again, it's growing on me, but I'm not really like watering it or doing anything special to it.
Look, if you're listening to this and you're one of those dudes with those luscious beards, reach out to Ben on social media and give him some tips. And then do the same for me. What can I do? Because there's like weird things now, weird hacks that you can grow your facial hair better. Although Lauren would kill me if I grew a bigger beard. She's not pleased if it gets too big. For a while, so there's like mustaches kind of came back. And so my whole facial hair was growing out because I hadn't been to the barber in a bit. And I trimmed up with my razors, I went down to stubble on the sides in the beard area and then kept the mustache longer. It just got uglier and uglier every day. Like, it's just not my look. So we're going to see what we can do. This is a new challenge. Anyway,
Justin,
go
Justin,
ahead.
We're going to get you Rogaine for your beard here, and I'll use it for my head, and then we'll be in business.
I love it, man. I love it. So we'll definitely do that. But the nice part is, dude, you're growing that beard. Just shave once you get to the point, you're good still. But once you get to the point where you can just shave it and you're good because you got the big beard. Anyway, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question.
We've had enough, Justin. We've had enough today.
Yeah, we're done. We're done. You guys can
done.
sign off now. No, like I said, since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, I like to wrap with this question: is in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth? Not talking about beard growth.
Yeah, I say we already kind of tackled it. It was launching the local business podcast, and an extension of that is having the capacity to rebrand it to a national audience. For all the reasons I already provided, it was in total alignment with my values and who I am. And in addition to that, I had spent 30 years of my life skill stacking, even if I didn't realize it, and having experiences that prepared me to be successful and own that moment. So I'm honored that I had the opportunity to own that moment. I hope that we're helping people's lives. But as you said, it's a constant evolution. I feel like I'm only at like a 60% temperature, and we're just heating up and heating up and heating up as we go from here.
I love it, man. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey and your beard tips and all the things, man. I think you're doing some great things in the world. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you've done in my circles and my spheres, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. Come back anytime.